David Des Roches is an associate professor at the Near East South Asia Center for Security Studies. David, thanks very much indeed for joining us. I have to say that those few words from Donald Trump at the steps to his aircraft before making his way home again after pleading not guilty in Washington, D.C., this is a man who's very capable of getting his message out in as few words as possible. He's a very persuasive public persuader, is he not?
Oh, he's a master. I mean, look, prior to the 2016 election, the question wasn't would he lose the election? It was, would he concede the election after he lost it? Everybody thought he was going to lose it. And all the smart people and people who thought they were smart like me were saying he's going to get wiped out because he's not engaging with the media. But it turns out that he used Twitter and his rallies to bypass the traditional media, who was mostly hostile to him, and managed to pull out a victory. So, yeah, he's a new kind of politician, and he's certainly not going to take this lying down.
I mean, I think regarding this case that's coming up, much more than the previous two indictments, which one was for after he was president, one was for when he was before president. This time is one about during his presidency. It's much more important. The accusations, the allegations are much more serious. But we get to the point where, for outsiders like myself, and I'm sure for many Americans as well, if we listen to the right-wing media, we come away persuaded that this is a witch hunt. And if we listen to the liberal media, we come away persuaded that this is a rock-solid case for pinning down a failed leader. And it's almost impossible to find any kind of conclusive, sure ground to make up our own minds.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, a lawyer friend of mine analyzed this for me, and he basically said that this is an unprecedented there's no precedent for using these laws in this way for this sort of action. But then again, it's also unprecedented that we had, the events we saw on January 6th. So we're kind of in terra incognita here, and it's very, very difficult. But I think that if I had to put money on it, I think that so far the conduct being alleged here, the crimes being alleged here, I think it's an open question as to whether or not they're crimes. And I think that certainly it's a new application, but I think one thing that Trump should be concerned about is the venue. District of Columbia is one of the most partisan, democratic places in the country. There have been cases where, for example, there was a bribery case against Mike Espy, the former Secretary of Agriculture, where somebody was tried in Arkansas for bribing him and was convicted, but then he was tried in the District of Columbia and was acquitted. And primarily, I think, presumably if the crime was committed, it takes two to bribe. So there's long been a feeling among people in the right wing that the District of Columbia will not punish Democrats and will probably overpunish Republicans. I think that's his major concern at the moment.
It's also interesting, looking at the indictment, I have only looked at the headlines. I haven't read all 45 pages of it yet. But defrauding U.S. government, obstructing official proceeding, conspiring against rights, presumably referring to people's electoral rights to vote and vote cleanly, obstruction and attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, all to do with the allegations of manipulating the electoral result. Nothing in there about the storming of the Capitol on the 6th of January. And it seems, presumably, the special counsel has steered away from that, thinking that's, for some reason, not sure ground in terms of making his case, which makes one wonder, is any of the ground sure in terms of taking a prosecution like this to court and winning a conviction?
Well, that's what people on the right are saying. So, as I said, these are kind of unusual applications of the law. Unless the special counsel has a witness or a tape recording of the president saying, I want you to go and break into the Capitol, it's going to be very hard. And Trump supporters have already released videos of, Kamala Harris saying, we need to get out there and protest, in another context. So it's going to be very hard to prove a specific crime. However, it's possible that he'll be convicted in the District of Columbia and then have to go through appeals. And meanwhile, the election cycle is going on. So, what Trump supporters are saying is that, this solidifies his base as a persecuted person within the Republican Party. But among the undecided people, a lot of people in the United States will support Trump, whatever he does. A lot of people detest Trump. And the question is for unsupported people. The idea is, well, as the indictments stack up, undecided people who don't pay a lot of attention to politics may just decide, to heck with him and vote for somebody who doesn't have the legal baggage. That's the fear, I think, among Trump supporters.
David, just as we're talking to you, we're seeing the Trump private plane taxiing out onto the runway at Reagan National Airport. It strikes me he only got on board a few minutes ago, and yet already he's been given clearance by air traffic control to get his spot on the runway. So the influence is forever there. While we're watching those pictures, David, though, I'll take the chance to thank you very much indeed for joining us here on TRT World, and thank you for your thoughts.